All right, how do I march through? So it's arrows back and forth?
It should be just arrows back and forth. Yep.
All right. Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm Thom Robertson. My talk today is on writing better code. I'd like to say, first of all, that my intention is absolutely not to insult anyone. I know we've got a very large array, a large range of skill sets and experience. So if I'm saying something you already know, then believe me, I'm not trying to tell you something you already know. So bear with me. But I feel like there is a range, and so hopefully we can all together write better code, except of course for that. So there's an announcement. Yeah, no, it's okay. I can't hear what they're saying. Are they once again talking about the elevators? Fire alarm? Oh, lovely. So, yeah, it kind of is, isn't it? I have no idea what the hell it is, and maybe we could decipher it someday. All right. So this talk is in three parts. First, I'm going to talk about my history in programming. I'm going to talk about the ways that one learns to write better code, and then I'm going to have a third section, which is actually down, individual tips, tricks, and techniques. So first part, here I am, Thom Robertson. Started when I was 13 on the old machines. Always wanted to make video games. That's who I am. That's who we all are. Spent 11 years working in big companies and teams. Microprose, I was working on Guardians Agents of Justice. Acclaim, I was working on Star Trek Secret of Vulcan's Fury. Interplay, I was working on Star Trek Secrets of Vulcan's Fury, and Acclaim, I was working on All-Star Baseball. So all as a coder, mostly in C++. So, but as far as an indie goes, like many of us, I'm always making my own games on nights and weekends, and big companies are not a great fit for me, not a great fit for really any of us, because they just said, oh, you're a coder, so you go in the coder box. And so eventually I made my own top-scrolling shooter called Aggressive with a absurd exclamation point on the end, and sold it off my own website in 1997, and hey, people started paying me. Oh, hey, $10 a month, $20 a month. I'm getting somewhere. Finally left the big companies to be a full-time indie in 2003. I worked on quite a while ago, I worked on a knockoff of Pokemon called Battle Pets, which had just a teeny bit of traction, made me like $600 a month at its peak. I did kind of a tech demo thing of an MMO, which kind of blossomed on its own, called Blade Mistress Online. And then more recently, I've had a great success with my Artemis Spaceship Bridge Simulator. So, and as far as my coding skills go, got started on those old machines with BASIC, as we all did. Jumped into C and C++, learned Java, taught C# for a while. I've worked on Windows and DOS and DirectX, and even did some 16-bit Windows 3.1. This is, like, I'm not going to say I died for your sins, but you can be very glad you never have to do that. And I've worked with teams of up to 11 coders at once, and of course, I often work by myself. So that was me. Let's talk about the 4 ways that I know of for a person to learn to write better code. And this is in order. This is best to worst. So first thing, the dreaded code review. So, and it's pretty simple. It's sit in a room for an hour with peers, and they go over your code line by line and tell you everything that you did wrong and ask why you did everything. So, and the pros of this are, honestly, you will get faster quick. I mean, you will get better quick. Having that kind of peer pressure in that intense environment is actually life-changing. The cons, though, extremely emotionally difficult, especially for people like us who aren't excited about, getting questioned and told what to do and what we did wrong every day. So even in the best of times, it's hard to get peers into a room together, because even if you work in a big company, nobody likes to do the code review. So, and everybody's working hard. And for us lone wolf indies, it's even harder. So the next good way that you could learn to write better code is work with another coder. Always valuable. On the same code and same project, shoulder to shoulder if possible, you will learn a lot. And you'll especially learn a lot if the coder next to you is better than you. So pros are both of you will learn a lot. That's just how it happens. And another pro is it's good to think about programming for somebody other than yourself. From time to time, just thinking about, oh, how would they look at my code? How would they read my code? Can they read my code? Someone is valuable for learning. However, even if it's just one other person, you still got to find one. And even if you found one, you got to put up with them. And sometimes that's hard for me. And if you're the senior programmer, you simply won't learn as much as they will. If you're always in teacher mode, that's not necessarily what you signed up for necessarily. So third way, read books about coding. So specifically, I put this Writing Solid Code by Steve McGuire on top because I read that book quite a long time ago, but I read it all the way through, and my coding instantly changed. So I know of at least one instance where you pick up a book, you read it, you become a better programmer. And I believe that this is a very valuable thing for all of us for a lot of reasons. Here we go with Donald Knuth's Art of Computer Programming. I don't necessarily recommend it because Bill Gates is not looking for you and me. He's looking for, super cutting edge programmers only. But I put it up here because it's a very well-known book. However, this web search will give you more than enough reading material for the rest of your life practically. And as far as I can tell, it looks good. And I'll make my slides available. I think we can all make our slides available, hopefully. So pros about reading books is you will learn a lot and you will get inspired. And with books, nobody's telling you what to do. You can read and learn at your own pace. But that's also a con because it's about internal motivation at that point, which is not much of a con in this group because this group is all fairly well internally motivated. And also it's notable that all these books will be kind of not for us for all these reasons. College educated team, enterprise coders, how many of us are any of those things? Probably plenty of you are college educated, plenty of you have probably spent some time in teams, but like me, that's not who we are now. And finally, the fourth way you can learn to write better code is simply by reading other people's code. Blonde, brunette, redhead, I don't even see the code anymore. Isn't that the line from the movie? Yes. And the nice thing is code's everywhere, and there are so many examples. But to learn, you're not going to just pick one person. You're going to have to read lots of code and read to understand, not just skim. So, all right, so I have gotten out of the way my part 1 and part 2. And so now I want to focus on individual tips, tricks, and techniques. And I want to point out that hundreds of these exist, so this is not an exhaustive list. And I also want to point out that what I'm going to do is I'm prioritizing my favorite system agnostic ones. System agnostic is as much as I can. I have a strong background in C and C++. But, and because, it's my frame of reference and not yours, feel free to pick and choose. And if you are a really good, really experienced, old-timey coder, think of this as an Easter egg hunt. How many of my things that I say will be new to you and how many will be like, yeah, I heard of that 20 years ago. Yeah, that's cool. So, and I want to point out that I don't always practice what I preach. I'm not perfect. I'm a flawed human being, as are we all. So no judgment. Let's, this is about learning and not about putting anybody on the spot. Number 1, in conditionals, constant goes on left. I don't know if anybody's ever seen this before, but in a lot of languages, not just C and C++, if you make the top one and you use a single equal instead of a double equal, oops. So just as a habit, putting the constant on the left saves you. And a warning might save you on your compiler, but it might not. Or you might not pay attention to your warning. So better just to put all the constants on the left of an if statement. Whitespace, live it and love it. So you don't know these two gentlemen, but these were colleagues of mine at one time or another, and their words stuck with me for ages. So I'm going to share them with you here. Mike Steele said, Whitespace is your friend. Bruce Cooner said Whitespace is a gift from a loving God. I believe that this is something that we can all take to heart. So this is code from my Artemis game. It's actually the same code in two different places, but one of them uses Whitespace and one of them doesn't. Which one is more readable? So notice that when I talk about Whitespace, I'm talking about the whole thing. I'm talking about everything that the compiler ignores, including actual spaces, including vertical white spaces, including comments, and of various kinds. So don't be afraid to make coding easier on yourself. So I didn't put this cat in. My wife insisted I put this cat in. So, but he's cute. So for instance of don't be afraid of making code easier on yourself, look here at the top, I use a C++ define so-called macro to turn a for statement into something a little more slick and clean. And then I use it in my code. You may think, oh, this is kind of lame. This is not very much of a savings. This is not you're not saving that many keystrokes, Tom. But trust me, once I actually put this in my code, I started using it everywhere. And it saved me time and it saved me effort. And of course you say, well, what if I want to loop in a non-integer? Or if I want to decrement instead of increment? Well, of course I have to fall back to this. That's not the point. The point is using the system that's there to make your life a little bit easier, often, in my experience, has outsized value, more than you would think. So commenting or no, code itself can be self-documenting. So here's a piece of code from my Artemis game. It sends a message. So the message is change ship. And I'm also sending the move type, hold type, and color value of the ship. How do I know all this? It's because my variable names are more than 2 characters, and I'm actually trying to make the code itself a little bit more descriptive. And I'm actually trying to make my variables mean what they say. That kind of thing. So this is what I mean by self-documenting code. It's not the be-all end-all, but it's another tip and trick. And certainly there are bad habits that various development environments can instill in you. I grew up, as I said earlier, with the basic programming language, which really only cared about the first 2 characters of every variable anyway. So it was basically telling me to be bad. And I had to get over that. So code can be self-documenting. It's a worthwhile thing to think about. So here's another tip, the conditional from hell. It starts out simple. In fact, this was a piece of code in Artemis, and it started out with a simple if ENE, which is short for enemy, right? If that pointer is valid, then shoot the enemy, right? But then I started looking at all the other cases in which I needed to check to make sure that I shot the right thing at the right time, and lo and behold, this if statement gets crazy. And because when it's crazy, you cannot find the bug inside it, right? And even if you wanted to, you can't really debug it because it's all on one line from the compiler's point of view, and it's a giant mess, right? It will cause you grief, and you must unroll it. And the way you unroll it is like this. This is the same code except made better. And what I've done is I've used more space. I've said, okay, it sucks, but I'm going to have to use an entire screen of code to figure this evil if statement out and make it right. So what I do, obviously, I set the bool want to shoot clearly says what this if statement is all about. So at the bottom, I can simply test if want to shoot. And then in between, I can break out in my individual clauses this way. And it gives me actual room to comment in the individual clauses. And it gives me room for my debugger to actually help me step through and figure out which part of this is not right. So unroll your evil if statements. Let's save questions for the end, though. I'm sorry, but I wanted to point out that a buddy of mine when I was at Microprose, got his paws on the original code for Civilization, the original Civilization. And we were digging through it, and we found one of these evil giant if statements that filled the entire screen. And it was a simple, can I move to the next hex test? And of course, everyone was like, how did this ever work? I'm sure they don't know. So, don't be afraid of fancy IDE tools. I know because I've been there that when you're young, you feel like, just give me a text editor. Damn it, give me a text editor, leave me alone, right? And I've also felt like I could use a fancy tool, but it'll break or it'll get behind a paywall and I won't be able to rely on it anymore. So screw it, I'm just not going to rely on it, whatever. I'm telling you from the depths of experience that you can rely on this stuff. You can go ahead and say, I'll invest in these features to make my life easier. Because actually they're pretty common now. Look at all these cool tools that you can pick from depending on your development environment, including color coding your code. That's nice. That's actually worth something. Auto completion and IntelliSense. Auto completion is when you type ANY and it automatically pops up a little thing that says, did you mean to type anything? So, and of course, that's great when you're trying to type your own variables because you made a variable 20 characters long. You only have to type the first 3 characters and then choose the little button. That's nice. IntelliSense is when you start typing your function and it pops open a tooltip showing the calling arguments and return value of that function to help remind you of what function you're using. Folding is when you see the little plus signs, minus signs on the left side of your code, and you can hit the plus sign, minus sign to basically make large chunks of your code like functions temporarily disappear so that you can look at what you want to look at. Advanced search and replace, actually you can get crazy advanced. And understanding that and understanding how it works is worth your time. Refactoring, which is actually a trivial thing in some languages and a very non-trivial thing in things like C and C++, is still well worth it if you've got a development tool that does that for you. Because, you know, as we saw earlier, I had to make a variable says can shoot or, you know, does want to shoot. And if that variable started out as AN35, you really want to refactor it, and it's worth doing so. And bookmarks, which is just another cool feature of jumping around between multiple files and keeping track of where you are in your code, because we always have to do that anyway. So, old buddy named Jesse Spears used to bug me about every single magic number he found in my code. So this is the same code, exactly the same. The only difference is that this one has numbers and this one has hopefully well-named constants to help increase the readability and understandability of the code. If I was just looking at this, I have no idea what 6,000 means, and I have no idea what 5 means. But down here in this code, I know 5 is for cloaking, and 6,000 is the far camera plane. Premature optimization. I just want to throw this in here because everybody's heard the excerpt here from Donald Knuth. Premature optimization is the root of all evil. Well, I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I want to actually put the entire quote in to provide context. That, you know, we often find ourselves stuck in a little piece of our code trying to optimize it when we should at least leave that for later. If not, focus on things that are more important. Candy machine interface. Now, I'm going to leave it to you to read the Writing Solid Code book if you really want to know why it's called Candy Machine Interface. But it boils down to not just writing your functions for what you need it to work, but writing your functions for what the users of your functions, which probably include you, assume just naturally. So if you see, I've got 4 functions here, and they're actually exactly the same function. They're exactly the same function, but they have different calling arguments and different return values. Which one is the right one? And the answer really is as much what your code users and your function users are going to assume is the right one. Because if you do the wrong one, then the problem is they assume wrong, and then they get mad at you because the code doesn't work the way they thought it did, and you know, this kind of thing. Hungarian notation. It's an interesting concept. And it basically boils down to adding letters to the front of variable and function names to increase the readability in a weird way that you might not think. So for instance, this variable here, big table index, G_PUL tells you that this variable is a pointer, it's an unsigned long value, and it happens to be global. Similarly, this draw function has m underscore b attached to it, which means it's a member function and it returns a Boolean. So somebody thought this was a really cool idea, especially some people in Microsoft in the 90s, which is why, depending on the Microsoft library you use or you interact with, you might run across this kind of situation. But I want to point out that there are several dialects. It's not standardized throughout the entire industry by any means. And a friend of mine who I talked about this to pointed out that, this was big in C and C++. For a language like JavaScript, it's just not going to be that important because the language is different in fundamental ways. So I'm not saying use it. I'm saying this is an interesting idea that you might want to explore if you think it's a neat idea, if you think this is valuable to you in your code. Give it a try, or at least read up on it. Similarly, dry. Don't repeat yourself. When I heard about this, this was actually not any big deal. It was just saying, if you write 3 lines of code to load your spaceship, then you're going to load another spaceship, so you copy paste those 3 lines of code and change it slightly. And then you have to load 5 bullets, so copy paste it more. The 3 lines get copy pasted, copy pasted, copy pasted. And then you look back and you go, I should have made a function out of that, right? And we've all had that experience, and that's not a big deal. It's just a basic thing. Don't throw 20 pieces of nearly identical code in your code when you could have simply made it a function and called the function 20 times. That's going to save you code. That's going to save you heartbreak, right? That's what I believe dry is. But as it turns out in my research, it's blossomed into a giant philosophy, many books, much blogging, whatever. And that philosophy embraces the central concept that I've quoted here, single unambiguous authoritative representation. Just not making more work for yourself with my point here. Use it if you feel it's useful. So this is something that I've come across many times. Starts harmlessly enough. Everybody can read this code. Even if you don't program, you can probably read this code. The problem, of course, is that this code is the start and not the end. You start filling in the blanks. You start adding code into these things, and before you know it, that poor little else statement is out in the middle of nowhere and you have no idea what the else statement is or what it has to do with anything. It's all alone by itself. So sad, like this teddy bear. So avoid that. And the easiest way that I know to avoid that is simply comment when you create. And the easiest comment is just take the if part of it and just cut paste it with a comment. Now, more than likely, this if statement, if sword is on fire, is not going to last. As you change your code, it's going to change to something else. But just this little bit of commenting is going to save you a lot of heartache when you come across the lone orphaned else statement. It takes a while to figure out where did this else statement come from? What does it do? So save yourself the trouble. So I'd like to point out that so anyways, this is another thing that I think is very important. We all know about arrays. It's one of the first things in our programming book. We all get to arrays, we understand it. But in a larger sense, an array, especially in a class-based language, is called a container class. And it's not the only container class that exists. And it's been surprising how many times I have worked with professional coders, and then I see their code, and I realize with a sickening thud that they never got beyond arrays. They never learned the other 3 here. And of course, there are branches and possibilities and container classes that are not these 4, but these are the 4 big ones. And I feel like knowing about arrays, but knowing about linked lists, knowing about maps, knowing about trees, and knowing enough about them to know which one you need to use at this point is like having a flashlight in a dark room. That's how important I feel container classes and just a basic understanding of these container classes are when you're coding. Again, seems just logical to me, but I have known plenty of coders, even coders with lots of experience, who didn't bother to go down this road. And I feel like sometimes they're in a dark room. All right. So in conclusion, I'd like to point out that your code has an audience. Just like any written word, it's just like you were writing a book, whatever, you always write for an audience. And you should embrace that. You should embrace writing for your intended audience, even if it's just you. So you can imagine a person, might be you, might not be, just a few months from now, tight deadline, completely confused, totally frustrated, 30 hours awake, big headache, so much stress. Have pity on that person. Have pity on that person today with the code you're writing today. It might be you, might not be, but we're all good people, so have pity on that person. And that's my talk. So, time for questions, if there are any. There might not be. I see a hand.
I just want to reinforce the importance of code review.
Mm-hmm.
It's really a good way to
Mm-hmm.
improve your code and learn stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that point was well made.
Yeah, he was reinforcing or agreeing with me completely about the code review and how valuable it is if you can actually get it to happen. Again, it's, I'm sure you know as well as I do, emotionally it's not fun. It's almost like going to a dentist. But there is no doubt it will teach you what you did not know. So, any other questions? Yes.
I have a couple questions about kind of learning how to program.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm at a point where I understand data structures and I can find out the simple bugs and
Mm-hmm.
open source stuff a little bit. But the idea of making a complete program from scratch is really intimidating to me, and
Mm-hmm.
it seems like a jump that I don't know where to start learning to get past that, where I just build something completely on my own.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things involved in that, like where to find the right libraries, but just like even just opening up a document, like I don't even know where to start.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if you recommend any resources for that, or just putting the notes, kind of how to begin your own project.
So he was talking about being a beginner programmer and the gulf between being a beginner programmer and actually creating your own finished product and doing all the things necessary to actually get a real finished project together and working and together. And I thought a lot about this because I've been teaching video game development at my local community college, and I'm sure many of us have also been teaching. And unfortunately, there are several pieces to that. I think many people would agree that it boils down to just do it. I mean, it's a bulling ahead can't be wrong for the most part. But your suffer and confusion has to do with lots of important questions like what's my proper development environment? What's my target machine? What's my target language? And what algorithms do I need to know to get my job done? All of which are big, non-trivial questions. Most of us get over that, again, by sheer force. I mean, even if it's the bad choice, find a development environment and find a machine and actually do something on it. So as far as algorithms go, the best place is the internet. Certainly where I learn, and places like this, where, now you know about Markov chains. Hey, that's an algorithm. Just another 99 of those, and you'll be an experienced video game programmer. So.
You said it's not cooking with Python. Yeah. Then have you seen the Roguelike tutorial? Yeah. Testing on that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good starting point. But
I'd like to add two things. One is that you're probably going to get to your first successful project by a ton of failed projects. Right? You're going to climb your first complete project that actually works on a mountain of stuff that got there partially, and it was so horrifying to you, you just had to stop and do it. And you'll get a little higher each time. Another thing is don't be afraid to tweet or email anybody in the room, or pretty much anybody, because I know we all suffered exactly that pain, and will feel pity, right? If not friendliness, then you will find help. So be very.
Yeah, Brian was saying, just adding that, your failed projects are just as valuable as your finished projects. And don't be afraid to reach out.
Also, remember, you mentioned building from scratch. You're not building from scratch. Nobody here is building. Well, some people might be building from scratch.
If you're a programmer to Roguelike an assembly, more power to you.
Yes, exactly. But there's so much stuff available, and the failed projects that you mentioned, they're going to be part of the stuff that you're going to use for the next one. And so you're always standing on the shoulder of giants. Yeah, just reach out and keep using other people's code and go on from there.
All right, so are we gonna, a new question, or do we have something to add to his issue? Yeah.
I think tinkering with existing code that works is a really great way to wet your feet. Like, if you don't just start building a car with metal and a welder, right? You just go to your car and start playing with things under the hood. So, and then if you have a debugger that can stop and just start stepping through code, it's unbelievable how much you can learn just by having someone else's code and stepping through it and just seeing, like, well, now what is it doing? Why is it doing that? So I would say start tinkering with things, and it can be, you know, that 30, you change it to a 40, and now your character's stronger, and now you understand that. And then, like, well, stronger, and then search the code for, you know, strength, and you can see all the places where it's used. So I would say tinker first.
Tinkering and debugging somebody else's code to figure out what's going on. That's good. Just as a little one last side thing, I have always found that something called the minimum app is exceedingly useful to me when I'm starting to learn a new API or a new development environment or a new machine. If somebody can give me a minimum app, which you can search on, then that just, wow, that's so much better than somebody else's pile of code. So you have a question?
Some of the techniques that you recommended
Mm-hmm.
to deal with breakable space inside of your paragraphs of code.
Mm-hmm.
Can you describe approximately the size of a function in your great code base, maybe Artemis?
He was talking about that many of the things I'm talking about have to do with vertical space, and he asks how large are my functions on average in my code. And I have to say that that's not a great metric for a lot of reasons. I would say that I definitely try to keep functions relatively short, but we all try to keep functions short, and look where it gets us. I mean, it's just one of those things. Sometimes you get a function or a class that balloons way out of control, and you have no idea how it got to be 10,000 lines, but it just is. And now what are you going to do with it? And then other things, use a beautiful function, 5 lines, you use it everywhere. It's just perfect. I'm going to use it for the next 10 years. Then there's everything in between. I think that things like that depend on so many variables and factors. I'll tell you a little story. Once I mentioned my friend Mike Steele. He came from originally when I met him, he'd come from another shop that was doing military programming in Ada. And even though they were using SGI machines, which at that time were huge monitors, the rule in his shop was that if your function is more than 1 screen long, you're fired. I mean, it's not everywhere that happens, of course, thank God. But, and that's when the whole thing crosses over into both the team you're working with and the environment, the social environment you're working in, and what you're expected to do, which is what you should do because they're paying you, and what I call religion, which is issues of tabs versus spaces, how many spaces per indentation, how many characters of, whatever, and how should your function comment headers look and things like that. Which again, if you're a lone wolf coder, the answer is do what works for you best. And if you're working in a shop where they're paying you, the answer is do what they tell you to do. And that's really, it's no use getting into a religious argument about specifics like that. So I was hoping to get stuff on this screen that was as useful as possible to as many people as possible. And I think that issue of function length is a complex thing that can easily spool out into a quandary. So obviously shorter is generally better, but it's whatever makes it easiest to understand. Yes?
I'd like to add a couple things about reducing the emotional impact of code review.
Okay.
Just a couple things in my experience. One is a code review is not the place to enforce the coding style,
Mm-hmm.
stuff, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
That can be taken care of with automatic tools or just outside
Mm-hmm.
room. And the main reason that is just reduce the number of times you're told that you did something wrong while you're in that situation, and also people who don't have anything to say will sometimes feel like they need to say something and
Mm-hmm.
sort of focus on that smaller stuff that's not as important. And then just when you're giving this feedback, just be considerate of phrase things super bluntly.
Mhm.
And you don't have to sugarcoat it, but just, be honest and treat it like you're in a professional relationship with this person,
Mhm.
and you're both on the same team, and you both have the same goal, which is better code. And,
Yeah.
be empathetic while you're doing this, and think about how the word you're saying are being perceived.
So he was talking about how there are ways to mitigate some of the cons of a code review, including being professional, including being respectful, and including not conflating a code review with the style that is enforced by the development team you're on. And I agree with all those. I think in this room, code review is problematic for a lot of reasons, including that it's just hard to get peers together for such a thing. Much harder than if you're working in the same environment and you can just go down the hall and grab a few people from their desks. Having said that, I feel strongly that, there are ways to do code review right. And you see what I do is that when it's done right, code review really does make you a better coder quickly. Which is the only reason that I wanted to put it up here in my part 2, was to make sure people knew about it. Wasn't saying that it's for everybody or that it's even achievable for people in this group necessarily. But thank you. Yes.
To follow up kind of on the code review thing, last job I thought the code review was the thing you did like every couple of months and you got six people together. And I started a new job a couple weeks ago and we use Git and it's like pull requests flying back and forth all the time. And so you have to approve that, you have to recode, and that's gotten me up to speed so much quicker and a lot easier. You can just do that at your desk as opposed to having to get the 6 people in the room. And then just don't be afraid to read the code. That just immensely helps start reading the code.
Well, he was saying that with Git at his new office, he has almost a more distributed code review built into the process, and it saves time and heartache. Yes.
As a lone wolf, when is it really time to start looking at your code critically? Because there are classes that end up ballooning, but you never notice as it's happening.
Okay. I don't disagree with you. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. Thank you. His question was, when do you start looking at your code? Because it can get out of control pretty quickly, especially if you're focused on other things. And then you look, as I said earlier, oh my gosh, this class is 10,000 lines long. How did it get to be 10,000 lines long? I don't know. I know I wrote it, but so and the short answer is probably every time. I think I hopefully was pointing out in my talk that a lot of these tips and tricks are things that you just train yourself to do, the things that are habits that you have to get into, everyday things. But refactoring, and I don't just mean changing variables, but looking at a piece of code and saying, I really need to change this and make it easier to use, better, not so big, not so small, not so whatever, is something that you're almost on an everyday process having to stop and say, I can write this piece of code, or I can refactor this other piece of code, which is going to take time. And at the end of it, nobody will know that it was refactored except me. So what's the point? And I would say that obviously the time to refactor is when the complications of bad code start getting in your way at least as much as a refactoring would have gotten in your way. But it's, as you pointed out, it's often not that beautiful. It's often about where your head is at that moment in your development cycle. So I guess maybe a good tip is to find room for your head to be at the right space in your development cycle. Find room in your development cycle to say, I could spend a week recoding or refactoring. And again, we often don't have that. So yeah. Don't be mean to yourself. Don't beat up on yourself because you're not perfect. We are all flawed human beings. It's probably the best advice I can give. Love yourself. Don't be horrible to yourself. That's critical.
I wanted to add a point about the don't repeat yourself thing that you mentioned.
The dry thing that I was talking about.
You definitely phrased this like, you're going to implement some function that's spawned as a bullet object, and you're going to copy it 5 times. And it'd be better if you put that into a function somewhere.
Sometimes, yeah.
Type it 5 times or whatever. But I find the single canonical source of information to be really compelling, because I've seen happen in my code. Now other places is you have like, you know, some screen, right? That you have like, you know, like for your game it would be like in a spaceship or in this menu or in some other menu. And if you don't have a single canonical source for that function and you change it in one place, you're going to get confused why it hasn't changed in the other place, and then you create all this work for you where you have to go back through all of your code, find all those functions again, and update them, and then update them again when you change it, and again when you change it. So you're doing that work of repeating yourself every time you want to change your code.
Yeah. Yeah, he was reinforcing my point about the dry, do not repeat yourself concept, and pointing out that it's so easy to get into a mode where not only do you have to change your code 5 different places just to make a change, but because you did not wrap it up into a function that is only once, you go back to your code and you say 30 doesn't work for me, I'm going to set it to 20. And it doesn't work right. And you don't know why. And it's because only later you realize, oh, I need to change it from 30 to 20 in 5 different places in my code. I forgot that, and now I'm all confused when I'm trying to debug my code. And that certainly happened to me too. So that's certainly a very valid argument for saying, if I catch myself copy pasting code just to make it easy, you know, the opportunity cost of not stopping and taking the time to wrap that code up in a function so that there's only one place where that particular set of code happens. That includes the time debugging this mess where you change 30 to 20 in one place in the code, and mysteriously it doesn't actually affect anything because you forgot it's also in 4 other places in the code. That's what you meant, right? Okay. Yes.
On that point, one book, I know you mentioned other books too, but one book that really changed my way of coding was Clean Code.
Clean Code.
Clean Code by Robert Martin.
By Robert Marty.
Martin, yes.
Robert Martin.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's really well put out. The way
Okay.
he makes a great case for exactly that, for the repeat yourself principle and things like that. Good variable names, good function names. Talks about function sizes, but in a way that I think makes a lot of sense. And single responsibility principle.
Yeah.
I highly recommend Clean Code.
Clean Code by Robert Martin.
Yeah.
So,
We're almost out of time. We need to put in one comment and then we'll break for lunch.
okay.
Because we are in large part a lot of, lone wolf or small team devs. The internet exists for a reason. Roguelike dev on Reddit exists for a reason.
Roguelike dev on Reddit.
There are people who stream game dev on Twitch. Hi, Dev. Who is not here, unfortunately, but other people too. All of the feedback people give during things like 7-Day Roguelike, it's there. It is, the roguelike community has built itself up as a place for lone wolf devs to get feedback from each other. And that's really, really
Yeah, I agree that this roguelike community is actually excellent for your needs and everybody's needs in terms of learning from each other, studying each other's work, and even building on each other's work. So that's it. I think that's everything for this talk because we ran out of time. Thank you.
All right, so we're just going to take some time off for lunch, about an hour. Please keep your stickers because they'll help you get upstairs. Otherwise, you'll have to show your ID again. Not a huge deal, but it is a thing. And we'll be back later.
We back here at 1?
Yeah.